Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends from Pax Europiana, Austria will only be free once we are in NATO. And this is the historic place where the Austrian State Treaty was signed, which led to Austrian freedom from the Soviets, because the Soviet troops removal was guaranteed. But we were still under Soviet shackles. Yeah? Because just over there in the east, 60 kilometers, the Soviet troops were there and they were ready to strike at any moment. So they did that 1 year later against the Hungarians, who also wanted to have some form of neutrality or removal of the Russian troops. Yeah? And they brutally butchered. Andropov was the butcher of Budapest just 1 year or 1.5 years later after that State Treaty. On the 15th of May 1955, that was a good thing to do, to sign that State Treaty, because it led to the removal of this occupation regime. 1/3 of Austria, and Austrian geography is very much deep into the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, because of the location of Vienna, very deep in the Central Eastern Europe, and so this was the situation. And we were, of course, not really viable state without the capital, without the much parts of the north, because it was the northern Austria and eastern Austria occupied by the Soviet Union. Of course, first liberated, but as often in history, liberation turns very fast into occupation, and this is exactly what they did. They have actually kidnapped Willy Habsburg, one case, and also this one chief administrator, a high civil servant, a woman. She only came years later back from the Soviet Union. I think she was called Ottenschlager. Yeah, that was all these terrible things happened. Obviously, the 15th of May was a good way to celebrate, to get rid of the Soviets. We were all very happy for that, and I congratulate the people who signed it, and it was the American ambassador signing, and the foreign minister, and because we have 4 signatories, and the Russians, the Soviets, and the French, and the British, and the Americans, and it was thanks America actually for securing us. He was crying because he couldn't believe it. We were the only liberated part of the Soviet Europe, and they really left. It can only be understood as well in the moment of Russian and Soviet weakness, because they had this big power struggle after Khrushchev, after Stalin died in 1953, and then they were discussing what to do. And the big question was what to do really in East, because of the Eastern Germans already rising in 1953 on the 17th of June, and also in Austria people really very unhappy with the Soviet occupation regime. And then after Stalin died, now the latest research shows that this was a power struggle already after the loss of his Korean gambler, and then they let him bleed on the 5th of March of 1953. And then there was, of course, the answer to the Soviet aggression, because it was a Soviet aggression in North Korea. And this Kim would have never attacked without the agreement of Stalin and the support militarily and financially. And that was first of all also the takeover of China, never forget. Yeah? It was in 1949, then 1950 North Korea, and then Stalin lost in his 2 years of battle for the supremacy of East Asia. And then the Americans responded, the creation of NATO, and then also the question of what happens with Western Germany. And you can never separate the history of Austria and Germany. So basically the offer to join NATO for Western Germany and the foundation of the Free Republic, the Federal Republic of Western Germany, and its Western integration and rearmament and military integration into the American world was, of course, what to do then. And Western Germans to be tempted with a similar offer of neutrality and unity, and to make it viable, Austria had to be neutralized. The neutralization of Austria was basically an offer for Western Germany not to join NATO. And this is exactly what Adenauer says in his biography. You can read it. He said, this is an international socialist scandal. The Austrians fell in my bag and they signed this terrible deal. But for Austria, it was smart to do. The Americans approved it because they wanted to get rid of the Soviets at least once. And then there was this offer, and the Americans had from the beginning an indirect security guarantee for Austria. They even left military equipment in the case of a rebellion of Soviet movements. Then later in the 90s, they told us where the secret weapon caches were. And of course, the Americans would have defended at least Western Austria, and Eastern Austria was never to be defended. It was simply too close to the Soviet tanks in Czechoslovakia and Hungary, and that's why also Austria was so careful to avoid any form of provocation. They fought in the big crises of 1968 and 56 because of Budapest and because of the Czech Republic. Yes, the 15th of May was very important in 55, and then it led to the 26th of October, the day when the Austrians declared self-declared their neutrality. But that was basically the condition for the Soviet to remove themselves. We additionally had to pay $150 million and 10 million of crude oil in order to get rid of the Soviets, and they took everything they could in terms of industrial asset, and they took a lot of people as prisoners of war, or you can call it slave labor. It was more the second, actually, and they only returned them with the peace treaty, with the neutrality treaty. So in that way it was coerced, but it was also necessary. I'm not against neutrality 55, I was just already 95 against neutrality, because we could have used the opportunity to join the West fully as the Eastern Europeans, and that would have been much better. But still today we have a political landscape where nobody tells the population the truth about the state treaty, and they have declared it a myth of Austrian neutrality, that is something good and we are the bridge to peace, whereas all political parties, almost all, more or less everybody, with exemption of the Greens and most of the liberals, the Neos, they are basically tied up there with the Russian money, with money laundering, with oil money. The normal instrument of political power in Austria was the Social Democratic Party for more or less 50 years, and then it turned into the Christian Democrats, and then also the Austrian nationalists. They have started and they have very successfully perfectionated that from 2006 Schüssel, and from 2008 also the nationalists, and they are all deeply in the Russian money, especially Sebastian Kurz and Christoph Leitl and Wolfgang Schüssel, on the side where they shouldn't, because there's high treason. With Randy Wagner and Christian Kerne, that's ideologically they love Russian money because that's their holy grail, But that's normal for them. You cannot really reproach them. They are simply on that side of history. But for the Christian Democrats, that's high treason. It can be never forgiven to Schüssel, Leitl, and all of the others who are on the Russian payroll. Yes, this is the story about Austrian NATO accession. It will come for international reasons, only because of European and American pressure, not because of Austrian. I'm getting photographed, yes, for NATO. I'm the Austrian NATO activist. The second one. Yes, it was this balcony, and it was a historic moment at that moment. This is Belvedere, this is the castle of Prince Eugen, and it was in 55, and I was absolutely not alive at that time. I was only born 68, but I really honor this place because it's very special, and it was very, very important at that time. But we should never forget that in 1995 we joined the European Union, and that's the logic of that. We should have joined NATO at the beginning, and now Sweden and Finland, who joined the EU with us, they have decided to join NATO, and we are left outside. We have outsourced our security to the Eastern Europeans, and we are not in any way solidaric with them. And also when it comes to Ukraine, we are only doing the minimum, always hiding under that we cannot because of neutrality, because the Soviets have occupied us, and now under this kind of conditions, I don't know why we are in the European Union. And one day, very seriously, the question will come, can we be still a member of the EU when the EU has joined NATO, because all others have also joined Malta and Cyprus, and also there is only Ireland, and they have specific reasons with the United Kingdom why they are not in NATO. And it's time for us to get clear and to join the Western Alliance as a full member. And I think it's only logical that we explain that to the population and that we are part of that great alliance of the free world, of the free Western democracies, and that we are no longer behaving like outside or like we wouldn't, the world shouldn't care and we don't care for the world. We are no island, we are just a normal Central European country, member state of the European Union, and in the same logic we should be member of NATO as well, and we will be. Thanks a lot for watching here from this very historic place from the Austrian state treaty signing on the 15th of May 1955. It's time for Austria to sign the NATO accession and to follow up on what Sweden, Finland have been doing now and what Kosovo and Bosnia will do very soon. Join NATO together. It's time for the Balkan enlargement. It's time for the free Central European countries who want and should join NATO. Austria, Kosovo, Bosnia united in NATO. Thanks a lot, and more to come here from Belvedere, from the NATO campaign. Bye.